On this episode of Locked On Grizzlies, the dynamic duo rides again. It is I, Ja Morant, with Damichael. We are talking about the 2 second-round picks that shined in a Memphis victory over the summer Philadelphia 76ers. Ja Morant is officially fully cleared for basketball activities. We're going to preview the Salt Lake City finale against the Oklahoma City Thunder. It is a Wednesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a wild and wonderful Wednesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. It is I, Ja Morant, one of your hosts, joined by my co-host, Damichael, the commercial appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. Superstar Damichael. I tell you what, we had one of the best days we've ever had here on Locked On Grizzlies, behind the strong showing of Zach Edey, but dare I say, the stronger showing of one Damichael in solo hosting. One of the best episodes we've had of the program, partner. Congratulations.
I think that's more Zach Edey than myself.
Oh, no. Everybody wanted to hear what Damichael had.
It's the Edey mania. People love Zach Edey. We got people, shout out to the people in the six, man. We got people coming from Toronto, Canada. We got people, in the Asian community tuning in as well. We got people, from out there in West Lafayette tuning in. So it's that Edey mania. He's bringing another area of coverage for us.
Feel free to become everydayers to Locked On Grizzlies, proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day, but I'll talk more about that here in a moment. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I mentioned how you could become an everydayer. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get podcasts. Check us out each and every time an episode drops. Obviously, we're in the thick of summer leagues. You'll be getting an episode each and every day over the next few weeks or couple of weeks before the offseason fully kicks into low gear for the NBA and things slow down a little bit for us heading into August. But we're not there yet, partner. We are very much in the thick of it, covering Grizzlies basketball again. And I'm bummed out, not because I didn't get to partake in the Zach Edey mania yesterday. I'll get to enjoy that a little bit on the Thursday episode, I think. But I was bummed out because of how fun the Jazz game was. I watched that game just like I watched the 76ers game. And it was they were both, if they were lacking in pretty basketball, which if I recall, we warned our audience about, Michael, it's not always going to look good. It certainly wasn't pretty either of those nights, and that carried into the Philadelphia game. But it was good to see competitive basketball, and it was good to see, in particular, Jaylen Wells bounce back after a rough first night, and it was good to see Cam Spencer continue to do the things that you would hope, whether it's for the Memphis Hustle in South Haven or when he does get opportunity with the Grizzlies this coming year, you would hope to see him be able to do full time. I think you're going to talk a little bit more about this. While Wells put up impressive numbers, obviously hit the game winner, you and I have talked about before, partner, you want to see these guys thrive in situations that they're actually going to be in when the season happens. And a lot of what Jaylen Wells did on Tuesday night, not to be the bearer of bad news, isn't stuff that he's actually going to do when the Grizzlies are playing alongside him, like Ja Morant and Desmond Bane. The best thing that he did, I think it was 3 for 7 from 3 or something like that. Yeah. If he could keep that going, by all means, that is something that Memphis desperately needs moving forward.
That's what you like to see. And I mean, it's you make a good point, because the way that he played in this game is different than the way he's going to play most of this upcoming season when he's on the floor and whatnot. And with all that being said, when you realize that Zach Edey, Gigi Jackson, Scottie Pippen Jr., and Jake LaRavia would not be available for this second Summer League game, that's when you knew, okay, he's going to be put in situations that aren't going to be similar situations to the regular season. So I don't think you're being a downer, by saying that. It's just the realistic it's just the realism of the situation. But at the same time, knowing that, I'm looking at the game, I'm saying, okay, this is his chance. Show what else you can do. Because when those guys are on the floor, you're only going to be spot up shooting. You're going to be, attacking closeouts. And that's going to be most of the extent of his offense. You're going to see flashes of other stuff. But we saw around jumpers in this game. He didn't make a lot of them, but we saw him get to the basket. He made some of that. He's knocked down the mid-range jumper. I think pretty much through most of the game. He only had like 3 3-point attempts going into that fourth quarter. And then you mentioned that he knocked down 2 3-pointers in the fourth. I mean, through 3 quarters, he only knocked down 1, and he was barely attempting threes. He attempted 23 total shots in this game, and most of those shot attempts were coming inside the arc. I think when the team is at full health, it's going to be flipped a little bit. It's going to be more 50-50. You're going to see him, around that 3-point line, as he said, even in his introduction press conference, spacing the floor a little bit more. But this gave us a chance to see, okay, what else does Jaylen Wells have to his bag? We saw the floater he knocked down earlier in the game, and then we saw the one that ended the game. I mean, that thing was feathery, Joe. It looked like when you throw a little roll of butter in the skillet and it just roll around the skillet. Like, that's what
are we cooking in this skillet real quick? What are we making with that?
What is Zach Kleiman cooking? I mean,
Chef Kleiman, you're saying
second round picks are not looking too shabby. And I'm gonna throw you the lob here because as we get to talking to Cam Spencer, because when the Grizzlies drafted Cam Spencer, the name that came to mind for me, this is not a comparison by any sense, but I'm going to get into why. The name that came to mind to me was John Conchar. It wasn't Zaire Williams. It wasn't Luke Kennard. It wasn't anyone else who you deem may be at the bottom of the Grizzlies roster. It was John Conchar. And the reason is because if you watch Cam Spencer play, we talked about it, how at the collegiate level, despite him being 6'3" or whatever the case may be, he would average, over 3, over 4 rebounds per game, over 3 assists per game as well. He's a stat sheet stuffer, a la a John Conchar, but he's a better 3-point shooter. And what we see in this game, we saw, every time he shoots it, Joe, I don't know about you, but when that Cam Spencer shot goes up and it misses, I'm like, oh, okay, he missed one. Interesting. 18 points was cool and all because we expect the shooting and the scoring for him. 8 assists, 7 rebounds. He might be 6'3", but he's getting his hands dirty in there, and he's making some, plays as a playmaker as well. I think Cam Spencer's stat line and the way that we saw him play was more comparable to how he's going to play when other guys on the floor. Jaylen Wells had more of a extended role. His role in that first game was more kind of closer to the way he's going to play. But the 3-pointers, that's easily translatable. He knocked down 3 of his 7 3-point attempts. If he can knock those down, attack closeouts, which is something that Cam Spencer also did a good job of, which led to those assists, which led to him, scoring at the basket. He attacked the closeout, knocked down a nice mid-range jumper. Both of those guys did. The second-round picks were really good in this game. You needed them to be good without all those guys, and they stepped it up.
King Kleiman is making some Memphis top shelf barbecue in that skillet with that butter. I know that's not how you actually cook barbecue. All right, don't get mad at me in the comments. I don't know how to cook barbecue.
Those diehard Memphians might come at you.
That was just more of a reference to the food that I love from that area of the country. Yeah. I think that the beautiful thing about what both of these guys are capable of is you see very easy spots for them to help. Right. Mm-hmm. Whatever happens with Luke Kennard, which, by the way, remains unsigned, but we can address that at a later date. Whatever happens with Kennard, whether it's next season, this season, whatever the case might be, they're going to need shooting. Right. And both of these guys can provide that. The way that Cam Spencer plays, I'm not making the comp either. I could see a line of thinking and logic where they say Marcus Smart is not the most durable guy at this stage of his career. You have said that yourself. In terms of the way that he plays, not meant as a
defensively, though.
Right. Obviously, Cam Spencer is not Marcus Smart, but is the style of play similar enough in terms of being an undersized combo guard that competes, gets after it a little bit? And again, Marcus Smart misses a week, right? Can you get by a 3-game schedule against the Spurs, the Wizards, and the Bucks? Right, and I'm just pulling that out of my hat. I don't know what the schedule is. Can you survive and him fill those minutes? I think it won't be as good as Marcus Smart, but I kind of see the vision there. I am optimistic about both of them. I agree with you that I'm not as – and this is what Damichael and I have talked to you about, dear listener, dear viewer.
Yeah, we said this for a while.
You shouldn't take anything away from a single game. There has to be a large enough sample size. I'm not going to say what Jaylen Wells is or isn't until the last Summer League game in Vegas is played. I'm going to say he played well against Philly, just like if I was on yesterday's show, I would have said he played poorly against Utah. There are things that he has to be able to show that he's capable of in order to crack this rotation. Right now, his competition is John Conchar. It's not Marcus Smart or Gigi Jackson or Vince Williams Jr. Those guys are all in the rotation. His competition is trying to get in front of Zaire Williams, right? Like those types of guys. And then for Cam Spencer, he's just trying to show his long-term value to the organization so that when a guy like a Zaire Williams is no longer under contract, it's him that gets added on that standard deal as opposed to them going out in free agency. And truth be told, you, again, are more tuned in with the organization than me at this point. The way that the Grizzlies use the hustle, I'm fairly confident that they would rather do it that way anyway. They would rather have these two-way contract players develop for a year or two, and then as someone that doesn't work out or a Marcus Smart in free agency, whatever the case might be, leaves, they just plug and play with someone that's already been there because they know the system and they've been developed by these coaches. Yeah, exactly. I think we'll see that. And with Cam Spencer, it does feel a little bit different. I will say that, like, because he's an older, player. We've seen it more with the Santis and the Gigi Jacksons and kind of those prospect type guys. But I feel like they're going to try to fast track him at some point because he is what he is. As a player, this is who he's going to be. But yeah, the Marcus Smart come. Marcus Smart has longer arms. He's a much better defender. I'm talking about the mentality and the role that he can fill. That I agree with. Now the role, he's not going to fill a Marcus Smart role, but the 6'3", the dog, like if that's what you're alluding to, like the fact that he can be that dog, he's going to talk some trash. That is what I am talking about. He's going to get his hands dirty. I'm with you on that. Yeah, but he's not going to be as good as Marcus Smart. He ain't guarding Kevin Durant and those guys. Like, yeah, so I see the light. On a random night in February when Ja Morant wants to get to the All-Star game and they don't want to be there, Cam Spencer can come off the bench and bring a shot of energy. That is the comparison I'm making. He can. He did it that first game. Did you see? Absolutely. The three-pointers. He tilted that game in a way, and in this game, he got a bigger opportunity and took advantage of it. So both of those guys were impressive to me in the second game. Let us know how you guys are feeling about Jaylen Wells. I read the comments from yesterday's episode. Some folks weren't as excited about him as they were Zach Edey, for example. But Jaylen looked better. Cam Spencer has been consistent. The second-round picks in particular, because, again, no disrespect to the other Grizzlies. A lot of them didn't play against Philly, right? No Edey, no Gigi, no LaRavia, no Scottie Pippen Jr., I don't believe. Right. So those guys didn't play. The 2 second-round picks did, and they played pretty well in that win over Philly. Again, the game winner for Jaylen. Let us know what you guys think in the comments. When we come back, speaking of Ja Morant, Mr. Morant is fully cleared for basketball activity. We'll talk about what that means and what we hope to see from Ja this offseason coming up next year on Locked On Grizzlies. But first, this episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Game Time. I enjoy Major League Baseball. I'm not going to lie to you. On television, I like to turn it on and fall asleep to it in the summer. There's nothing like a baseball nap. But I also enjoy going and watching my Washington Nationals live and in person at Nats Park. I'm sure Damichael looks forward to the next opportunity he gets to watch his Atlanta Braves. It's a lot of fun going out to the ball game in the summertime, and you can make new memories right now with the good folks over at Game Time. The Game Time app is a blast. It is easy to use, fun to navigate, and they have all sorts of different opportunities for you to maximize your dollar, like flash deals, saving more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of any game or event. They have all-in pricing as well. You can toggle this feature, and it shows you the total price up front with no surprise fees at checkout. And, of course, Game Time has the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we are talking Ja Morant being cleared for basketball activity. Stick with us. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am Joe Mullinax, joined by my co-host, Damichael Cole. We are well aware that it is Summer League basketball time, and the Edey fanatics, right, the big main down in Memphis, folks are excited about him, likely to play in the game tonight against the Oklahoma City Thunder. But a friendly reminder that there is an actual Grizzlies team, that most of the Grizzlies are not playing in this summer league, especially not the Salt Lake City version. We'll probably see them popping up in Vegas next week, if I had to guess. And the star of the show, Ja Morant, is fully cleared for basketball activity. So, Damichael, what does that mean? Does that mean if Ja had a game tomorrow, could he play? Does that mean he's cleared to ramp up basketball activities and he's getting closer? Where are we at with Ja Morant in terms of his preparations for the 2024-2025 season?
It mainly means that there are no more limitations on that right shoulder. And that's been the case over the last few months, since the torn labral injury in January, where he had to end up getting the surgery and whatnot. Seeing him over the past few months as time went on, I mean, if you watch Ja Morant, he has a really good left hand. And he can shoot with his left hand. And you see him at the camps and stuff. He'll do stuff with his left hand. But he's very limited in what he can do with the right. He can maybe do a couple dribbles down. But as far as extending his shoulder and doing things like that, now he's able to pretty much do whatever he wants. And there's going to be a ramp up and all that in terms of getting him, up to full speed. But I think that is of no concern, on the Grizzlies side, because by the time late September, October rolls around, when the Grizzlies are in preseason camp, he'll be fully 100%, just like you would expect, any other player who's had a full off season to be, because he's pretty much only a couple months, behind the other guys. And I mean, it's Ja Morant. I mean, you can give guys 3 months head start over him, and he'd still be just fine. But the most important thing is, to me, in this situation, is he's cleared with enough time to pretty much take his time throughout this process. So we'll see. You'll start seeing the clips of him, throwing down dunks with the right hand now. That hasn't been the case as of late. He's been doing stuff with his left hand, but now, he can do that. He can, pretty much to the full extent use, his right shoulder like he uses his left shoulder. So that's the main thing here. But Ja Morant being cleared was pretty much the last injury hurdle that the Grizzlies had to cross off. We know all the guys who ended the season, dealing with injuries: Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., Luke Kennard. All of those guys have pretty much gotten healthy since the season ended. The one guy who was still left on the list was Ja Morant, and that's no longer the case.
Desmond Bane's feeling really good. I saw in the Mikal Bridges press conference, he talked about how he found out that he was being traded at Desmond
They've
Bane's
been bullies for a while. Yeah.
Which, that bums me out. No, I'm not going to lie. That'll be the one that got away for me for a while.
He got to eat for effort, Joe. He tried. He tried to get Mikal Bridges.
That's true. Speaking of all that, I think that with Ja Morant and his ascension back, his return, his bounce back season, right? The clearance for me means that he can actually go and work on his game. There's no injury. There's no cloud hovering over him any longer with a suspension.
That's important.
Everything's clear, right? And we can expect when training camp opens late September, early October, whenever it does, we can expect Ja Morant to be out there full force, ready to lead this organization and ready to lead this basketball team. That matters a lot. And it also matters that he can actually work on his game, this pull-up jumper. I know we'll talk more about Zach Edey here in the OKC preview. I didn't get a chance on yesterday's show because I wasn't there. The screens that this man sets.
You like those, didn't you, Joe? You like those, didn't you?
And we're going to be made fun of a lot, or at least I'm going to be made fun of a lot, because I'm going to talk about his screening a lot. And it's not the sexiest thing to talk about, and it's one of the reasons people didn't like Zach Edey coming out of the draft, because it is one of the best things that he does. But if there were times where there were 2 or 3 widths of people that screens were being set from Edey, and they were being closed out off by Scottie
Pippen could bake a birthday cake.
Scottie Pippen Jr., I think, has proven he's the long-term backup, and you and I texted a little bit about that during that game against Utah, and we'll talk more about that as the summer goes on.
Yeah.
But imagine if that's Ja freaking Morant going around that screen. And every time Edey set a screen, they had to collapse, and there was an open shooter. Every single time. Now, if you want to talk about defensive concerns and how every time they put Edey in that action, someone else was open, we could have that conversation too. But my big thing is looking at what Morant can do as a pull-up jumper right? As somebody who shoots in the mid-range, not all the time, but just enough to make a defense be honest so they can't just go under all the time. That sort of stuff is really going to be important for him to grow his game with, and he can prioritize that as opposed to what is the league going to hand down next, or what rehab assignment do I have to do. Now it's just about basketball for him, and I feel like he thrives at his best when it's just about basketball.
Oh yeah. This is what it's about for him, and this is a critical offseason for Ja, not just because of that, but on the mental side, he's finally starting to. You can see it, and he's finally starting to get over that hurdle of the suspensions and everything, the whole cloud that created. I mean, I talked about it, I think last month when he had the camp and all the kids came out. He was kind of surprised in a way because he still wasn't sure how people would receive him after everything that had happened in the last year. So that cloud hovering over him is starting to get a little bit lighter. And now he's fully healthy. And you mentioned, a great point there. Like all I could think about was over the last 3 or 4 off seasons, where at the end of every season, I always hear some player, whether it was Dylan Brooks a couple years ago, say, "Man, it was hard for me getting in a rhythm because my season got off to a rough start because I was rehabbing in the offseason." And Jackson Jr. talking about rehabbing in the offseason. Desmond Bain talking about rehabbing in the offseason. Now Ja gets pretty much enough time where that won't really be an excuse or anything like that for him, because he can work on his game and he's not just working on trying to get back healthy. So that's a big point as well.
I did my part. I got my coaching shoes, my shoes that I wear going into football games and going to school in the fall, and they're Ja ones and royal blue. So I'm doing my part. I'm adding to the redemption story, Ja Morant. I'm excited to watch the bounce back. I think it's going to be pretty impressive, and it's good to see everything's out of his way now. He can just focus on getting better in a lot of different ways, and I think he's going to take advantage of that. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to close out this episode of the show previewing tonight's Salt Lake City Summer League finale against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Again, like we talked about on Monday's show, don't necessarily care about the Thunder that much. We're going to talk a lot about what we want to see in this last Summer League game, this last tune-up essentially before the team heads to the big show there in Vegas. We'll talk about that next. Stick with us. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am Joe Mullinax, joined by my co-host Damichael Cole of the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. We're excited to have you with us as we close out this episode. I do want to remind you quickly about Locked On Sports Today, the first of its kind 24/7 streaming service over on YouTube. You can check that out after you're done with this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. All the hottest news and topics going on around the world of sports over at Locked On Sports Today, not being screamed at like you might be on ESPN or Fox Sports or something like that. So YouTube, 24/7 streaming channel, Locked On Sports Today. You can also check it out under the Amazon Fire free TV channels app. Damichael, we'll get out of here on this. Tonight, the Grizzlies play the Oklahoma City Thunder. I'm excited about this game first and foremost because it's a 7 o'clock Eastern time start, which means that I will be happily available to talk about Zach Edey and Scottie Pippen, assuming all those guys play. But somebody that, and listening to your episode, you mentioned him, but he wasn't a main topic. Jake LaRavia, right? Jake LaRavia on Monday was kind of like Jaylen Wells on Tuesday. LaRavia was doing some things that he's not necessarily going to do with the actual main Grizzlies roster, but it was still good to see him dominate, have success. And the Edey bucket that he got, right?
That was brilliant. That missed free throw.
That doesn't happen without the missed free throw, right? So that's an important thing to remind ourselves of. LaRavia looked pretty good too. So assuming that the team is at full strength, maybe it's Wells and Spencer who see a reduction in their minutes tonight, but they'll probably still play, I'd imagine. Regardless, we will almost certainly see Zach Edey, see Scottie Pippen Jr., Gigi Jackson, who I thought could have done better in that Monday game. I'll never forget that ISO fadeaway shot that he took from the charity stripe. That just was maddening to me. I think somebody was open at the top of the key that he could have passed to. But, there's lots of different guys to kind of say Monday was the full-strength game. Tuesday was kind of the mop-up crew to a lesser extent, except for the 2 second-round picks. Now we're back to full strength. What do you want to see in Game 2 as compared to what we got out of Game 1 from these guys?
Yeah, just some little things. I think there needs to be more assertiveness on getting the ball to Zach Edey when he has his man sealed. If you watch the progression of his career at Purdue, from his first year to his second year, by the time he was a junior, the ball had to touch his hands. And his senior year, it was. I mean, there weren't a lot of possessions where, hey, it almost looked like it was a rule. The ball has to touch Zach Edey's hands before we get into the rest of our offense. And that's not how things really work around here. The Grizzlies actually are more of a guard-oriented team, so to speak. And, I mean, we remember the days of Kenneth Lofton Jr., and there were questions about how he fit with the team because of his back-to-the-basket, low-post offensive style and whatnot, because the Grizzlies like to get up and down. But with all
the fact that he wasn't 7'4", 300 pounds.
Yeah, and just that minor part of it as well. But the thing is, with Zach Edey, you saw it, Joe. He was just moving guys. I mean, Kyle Filipowski, Walker Kessler, even at times, and the Grizzlies I want to see more assertiveness on that. And then, of course, you just want to see a bounce back game from GG Jackson. That's another thing. And, just a little bit more efficient. Again, because I think the question now, and it's not a major question, it's a nitpick thing, like with GG's game. You want to see him play winning basketball consistently. You want to see him, when he has a decent shot, pass it up for a great shot to his teammates and things like that. Nobody cared at the end of the regular season last year. We just wanted to see, GG Jackson go for 25, set some rookie records, and try to go score 30, 40 and all that. Now, you got some real hoopers around you. So take advantage of that and make the game easier on yourself. But lastly, Joe, we're going to double back on Jaylen Wells. We're not sure if he's going to play in this game. But if he is available, I want to see Jaylen Wells kind of mesh a little bit better with this group. I think this second game that we just saw is a confidence booster in a way. Now, knock down those three-pointers, attack those closeouts, drive and kick to teammates and things like that. I want him to flow a little bit more in the rhythm. Every player in the Grizzlies starting lineup in that first game scored in double figures except Jaylen Wells, and he shot 1 of 9 and only scored 2 points. He's a much better shooter than he showed in that game, as we saw with the three. I mean, those three-pointers, the ones he made were just like they were good. So with that being said, I think those are three things that stand out for me.
I like the sound effects there, by the way. That was solid.
Oh,
That was good. You get extra analysis here at Locked On Grizzlies.
That's the sound I used to make, Joe, when I did my step back
when you made your shot. Ooh. Yeah. And it would go in, of course. And you would just walk back and you would make sure they understood what happened to them. They already knew, but you made them feel it, which I like.
Big buckets deep, Mike. That's what they call it. Big buckets deep, Mike.
I like that. Big Damichael, old Big D over there. Wait, pause.
Yeah, you got to pause that one, Joe.
Big buckets deep. All right. See, I'm just showing that I learned. You taught me, partner.
You're hip now.
Before we get kicked off the air of Locked On Podcast Network, I think that my thing that I'm most excited about seeing, I agree with you on Jaylen Wells with this group of guys, assuming he plays, right? He's played his 2 games. There's a decent chance they went into these 3-and-3 nights in Salt Lake City saying those guys would play the first 2 and then they're going to sit this last one out. We'll see how it goes down. Assuming Wells plays, probably limited minutes, just trying to see him in a better spot with those guys. GG Jackson has to be a better facilitator, right? And I'm not saying that I want to see him try to be what Zaire Williams was last year or 2 years ago, whatever it was, when they forced him into that role. Because that's not GG Jackson, right? That's not what you want him to do. I want to see him make better decisions when he's in those isolation spots. Sometimes the right decision is going to be taking the shot because you're 6'9" and you're a very talented, gifted scorer. But you have to let the game come to you. And in fairness to him, he's 19 years old, right?
He's still the youngest player on the whole roster.
He is 5 years younger than Cam Spencer, right? And that's not hyperbole. That is fact. I believe Cam Spencer's 24 years old and Gigi's 19. So the understanding that these reps matter in terms of growing his game. I don't expect him to be perfect in any way, shape, or form. But I do want to see development, not even necessarily from game to game, but within a game, possession to possession. You make a mistake, you're in a similar situation later on down the road and 5 minutes, a quarter later, and you make the extra pass instead of trying to force up a shot. You don't have to do it alone. And I do think you make an excellent point, partner. At times at the end of the regular season, he did have to do it alone because there was literally no one else. Now you are in a much healthier situation, as crazy as that is to say about a Summer League roster, but it's true. You know, you've got a 7'4", 300-pound dude on the block. Worst case scenario, throw him the damn ball and let him go make a play. If you have a Jaylen Wells or Cam Spencer out on the perimeter, a Scottie Pippen that can get some penetration, find slashers. Keep your eyes up. Don't just get your head down and get into scorer mode. That might be where you're most comfortable right now, but comfort isn't the point of development. Comfort is the enemy of development. You want to get outside of your comfort zone and find space to grow your game.
Did the coach of you just kick in there? Comfort is the enemy of development?
Maybe a little bit.
I feel like you probably said that before.
Put that on a meme somewhere. Someone take a screenshot of my face and put it as a little quote by Ja Morant.
I like that, but yeah, that's something that the Grizzlies like to do in the summertime. You know, make their players uncomfortable. That's something Darko Rajakovic, used to say. A lot, wanted to make those guys uncomfortable during Summer League. So that's something I think we're going to see as they get into Vegas, especially more, they talked about putting the ball in G.G. Jackson's hands a little bit more and, kind of, I guess wanting him to be a better playmaker. Derrick Rose put it perfectly. I mean, at the end of the season, those last couple months, they were talking about G.G. Jackson having the ball in his hands more. And Derrick Rose simply, paraphrase here, was like, yeah, I don't see him really getting better that much at this during the season because that is something you work on in the offseason when you have an extended period of time and you got reps and reps and reps to work on it. So I think we'll see if there's been any progression so far in the area, and then he'll still have a couple months after Summer League to continue to work as well.
Looking forward to watching this Salt Lake City finale. The team heads off to Las Vegas after this game. Lots more basketball to talk about here on Locked On Grizzlies, and we're excited to talk about it with you. So let us know in the comments what you're most excited about going into this Salt Lake City finale. Going into our Thursday episode, partner, there's lots that we can cover. Obviously, the end of Salt Lake City, talk about this Thunder game. Maybe we revisit the Luke Kennard question. Not a ton of movement on that front that I'm aware of. Maybe you have more information, or you will by that point, fingers crossed. Lots of different angles that we can take as we end one Summer League session and get ready for the next.
Yeah, Vegas is going to be fun, simply because all the teams will be out there. And I still believe, based on what we've seen so far, the Grizzlies will have one of the more talented rosters. So I think they should try to be competitive in this thing. But then there'll be other questions that present themselves, because if Zach Edey continues to go 15-15, at some point, does he need to keep playing in here? We'll get to it. But that question, and if, we'll see. Like Jake LaRavia, the game was coming easy to him, in that first game. And if it continues to come that easy, maybe there's some more minutes for Jaylen Wells and Cam Spencer there. But we'll get to that more as the Vegas Summer League gets here. But a lot more to unfold over the next week.
The games are a little bit more spaced out, I believe, in Vegas. Maybe they have one back-to-back or something like that.
Yeah, they are. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they'll have an opportunity, to play 3 of 4, maybe even all 4 games, depending on how the minutes are spread out. But our Thursday edition is going to be awesome. Make sure you're here and hanging out with us for that. Thank you so much for being with us on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, literally anywhere you get a podcast, you can find Locked On Grizzlies. Make us an everyday piece of your NBA and Memphis Grizzlies content consumption. Make sure you're following Damichael Cole on X at Damichael C. He's the Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal. Make sure you're following me on X at Ja Mullinax. We, between the two of us, have plenty of experience covering the Memphis Grizzlies at this point. You have come to the right place today for great Grizzlies talk, and hopefully you'll make a good decision again tomorrow. For Damichael, I'm Joe. We'll catch you next time. Stay locked in. Enjoy the Salt Lake City Summer League finale. We'll wrap it up and move on to Vegas next episode. See you next time.